This is what's called the refutation exercise. The refutation exercise. We start off with a simple argument. Something like, I believe mountains are better than the ocean because the mountains are, they have more resources, or something, okay? Then I throw the ball to someone, all right? And then he would have to answer what I say. He would have to refute that. He'd have to say, no, I don't like the mountains, the ocean is better because. And you have to provide a reason, okay? So it's the refutation process. You state the argument, then you say what you believe, you provide a reason, all right? And then we won't worry about the final stage, okay, the impact so what stage, all right? So you can begin. You have an argument in mind, and then we'll do this a couple of times where 2 or 3 people do refutation, then we have to come up with another argument, all right? So think about issues that interest you, that are going on around the world or here in Japan, okay? I will begin. I will say that I know that it can be difficult, lots of arguments going around real quickly, but that's why the first stage of the refutation process is about focusing your listening. If you're not focused, if you're not getting rid of all of those distractions, then you're probably not going to understand all of the arguments, okay? So really need to concentrate, all right? Okay.
One thing I was going to say is...
Well then, should they sit down?
Oh, I mean, like it's a 2-second thing.
Okay.
When Dr. Z was talking about extending, that's why I draw this line, because that means in my head, extend this argument and make it bigger. That's the one thing I was going to add.
That's true. That's good.
Sometimes I might, often, what I will do is, before they read a piece of evidence, they read a tagline. That tagline might have a little bit of explanation in there, but as the opposing team, you need to be reading the evidence from the other team as they read it to you. So after you see their tagline, you should check out their evidence. There might be a reason in there that isn't within the tagline. And if there's a reason in there that's important, I would write that down too. So what that would look like for me is, like for example, we might, like this is the tagline, but if there's a reason within the evidence that's important, I'll just put a little dot and then write the reason out underneath. So that way I know that it's not the central argument, but a little bit extra explanation.
What I personally listen for when they're reading things to me is numbers. If there's a percentage or a comparison of numbers, I like to keep those in my head in case my cards have numbers so that I can compare them. And I just do like Jake does. Like for example, this card has 41% of the 140 water samples. So I would write 41% and then 140 next to that so that I just remember the numbers. So it's all it's what you think you need to remember through the round.
And what you ask actually brings up another interesting point, is that the taglines are supposed to be, the claim, the assertion made by the other team. It could be that after you hear the tagline, you understand the why part of their argument, and if that's the case, that's good. But if you have this moment where after you hear the tagline and you write it down, you don't know what the why is, you don't know why this is true, that's a question that you should ask in cross-examination. That's, if they don't have a warrant for their argument, that means that their argument's not complete. So it's always important to ask that question. If you can look at this and you know why, then you don't need to write anything down. But if you don't, you should read their evidence and ask the question.
And it is possible, although it shouldn't happen very often, it is possible that your opponent will have the tag, the claim that they're making, and then the piece of evidence not support it at all. Say something different. Obviously that's an ethical issue, but if you are listening carefully or you ask to see that evidence, you'll be able to check them on that to make sure that everyone is being honest. The other thing that I wanted to add.
I had something real quick to add on to what you just said.
Okay.
Do you remember the very first day when we said if you're reading something and it says this does not cause something, and you make it say this causes something? That's what Dr. Z is talking about, of read their evidence and make sure what they are saying is what the author intended. Because if not, you can say that in your next speech of, they changed the meaning, judge, and the judge can ask to read the card after the round. And then you can win on, they're lying to you, don't believe anything else they're saying.
Yeah, that is a good point. The only other thing I wanted to add is that, so they state the tagline, the claim, and so you write that down, and if you need to write down a reason, usually you have some time to be able to do that as they are reading the piece of evidence. So, one of the reasons why we teach how to take notes is because you have to do many things at one time in a debate round, and you need to try to be as efficient as possible. So that's why we try to only write down what is absolutely necessary so that you can remember it when you give your speech. But if you desperately or really think you need to write a reason down, you probably have a little extra time as they're reading that piece of evidence. And I will say this, that there is a difference between debaters flowing and judges flowing. See, when a debater is in the debate round, they don't have very much time. They're looking at their evidence, they're pulling their files, they're writing down information for their speech. So they may not write down as much material on their notes as a judge might, because a judge is going to want to listen carefully, make sure that the teams are being fair and balanced and honest and so forth, and then that might become important later. So they might write those reasons down more so than a debater would.
Also, what I do is, so let's say that Jake read this argument, and he read the tagline that GMOs reduce the number of chemicals we have to use. So I've written that down in Jake's color as the negative. While he's reading that card and I'm still listening, I might start writing down my response. So I might put a 1 and say, no, GMs increase. That way, when I get to this part of my speech, I don't have to think about it. All I have to do is look at that, and I know that means, oh, I need to say this. And so then he would, so he gets done. He says, my next argument is. And so then I write down his tag, and while he's reading that card, I start my, writing my responses again. That way, I'm not having to use all of my prep time that you're given as well to do this. You can kind of use the speaking time to get extra prep time. Remember how we were talking about using the time as much as possible? This is another way to really get more prep time for yourself.
That's good. I mean, we give you 8 minutes, but just using that 8 minutes to craft your speech, you will never have enough of just prep time in a debate round. So you need to use that time that you get during cross-examination if you're not somebody who's participating in the questioning, or like Shanna said, if something occurs to you during a speech and you have a moment to write it down, take that time and maximize all available opportunities to prepare your next speech. It's like Dr. Zia said yesterday, this is a game of chess. So you always need to be thinking ahead to what you are going to do next.
Your homework is to come up with one question that will either help clarify, or if you want us to expand or extend on an issue or a topic, and it could be anything. It could be the actual how to do a debate, or it could be about GMOs. So anything that's debate related, please bring one question back. Now, we may not answer all of them, and some of you may have the same question, but I think it'll be good for you to think that way.
The first few things that Shanna and I talked about a couple days ago, stock issues, that was a while ago. So if you need clarification and you want to look back to that first day, when you're trying to figure out what question you want to ask, that might be a good place to start, just so that it's fresh.
Or, you know, if you have a question about what that means and what are you supposed to do in those speeches.